So today we've had some phenomenal presentations about trends on the global level. And now we're going to talk a little bit about how disruptive innovation is creating jobs locally. So what we have today is a rock star panel in a very small amount of time. So I'm going to very quickly introduce our panelists. My challenge was to get every introduction to one sentence, which is tough because they all have amazing resumes. And their full bios are in your book. And then we're going to talk for a bit, and then we're going to go to Q&A. So please start thinking of your questions because these are phenomenal panelists. So from my left, Max Friefeld is the CEO of Vudu Manufacturing, a Brooklyn-based startup changing the manufacturing game by enabling mass production through a coordinated army of 3D printers. And then Katie McAuliffe, next, Executive Director of Digital Liberty, where she fights to maximize consumer choice and competition in a free marketplace. How am I doing? So far, so good? Brian Moyer, President and CEO of the Nashville Technology Council, where he works to coordinate businesses, schools, and other stakeholders to build a vibrant local tech economy. And finally, Aaron Saunders, founder and CEO of In3DC, the Inclusive Innovation Incubator, a Howard University-associated group that helps build a tech ecosystem that gives minority entrepreneurs access to the resources and connections that will enable them to succeed. So let's start with Max. So Vudu is essentially a manufacturing company built of software.
Yes.
Right? I've never been to your facility, but I imagine it looking more like a server farm than a traditional factory.
We have 160 3D printers with about $5 million worth of output a year in 2,000 square feet. So they're on racks, they light up, they're controlled by software, and really the goal of Vudu is to build a fully automated factory that is lights out.
So in this fully automated factory, this next generation factory, what skills are you looking for in next generation factory workers?
So for the factory team specifically, one of our goals in the next 3 years is to never hire production staff again. And the difference here is we're actually looking to hire maintenance staff, not production staff, who are able to build, maintain, and improve the system that produces parts, rather than people who are directly involved in kind of what you think of the traditional assembly line worker. The system is going to run itself. And that actually is going to make manufacturing jobs look a lot more like software, where you can asynchronously produce parts. Your people don't have to be on the line 24 hours a day to get your machines up and running and always be making things.
So the people who you were looking to hire, who are qualified for these jobs, are they PhDs, are they college grads? What are you looking for?
Actually, most of our employees today in the factory are self-taught engineers, hobbyists, makers, people who have experience with 3D printing. And we've had a lot of luck working with local, the young adult internship program in New York, a lot of the local community colleges, training the new 3D designers are really excited to come work at our factory because they can take their 3D design skills or their personal interest in 3D printing and put it to work.
And then once they get to you, what kind of on-the-job, I was about to say training, but I stopped myself. What kind of on-the-job education do you do?
Yeah, I mean, we train everybody to work in one of the 5 different areas in our factory, from running the machines, maintaining them, to just QAing and shipping out parts. I think long-term, the jobs in our factory are going to be very comparable to like an Amazon warehouse, rather than maybe a traditional manufacturing facility. And so you can train people how the facility should work, how to maintain the equipment very quickly. It's not rocket science, but these are very good paying jobs, and we produce a lot of output per employee.
Let me go over to Brian quickly. So Nashville has a very vibrant tech economy. You've got healthcare, you've got entertainment, you've got hospitality. For the companies you're working with, the Nashville Technology Council, are they finding that the schools are turning out the kind of employees with the skills that they need?
We have the same challenges that most of the cities represented in the room do. Yes, they're turning it out, but not in the quantities that we need. And there have been a number of initiatives that we've put in place in Nashville to try and accelerate that next generation of talent that we're going to need.
All right, and one of them is Tech Hill Commons. Which opened, was it last night? Yesterday.
Yeah, that's right.
How'd it go?
It went well.
Good.
It was, 400 people showed up, and it was a great welcome from the business and the tech community.
And tell us a little bit about what that does.
So actually, Tech Hill Commons is our new home, the Technology Council, but also primarily event and educational space. If I could take just a couple of seconds to paint a little bit of a history, it might help people relate to what we're talking about here. Nashville is booming, 100 people a day moving into town. As of January 1, more cranes in the air than New York City. We're very fortunate to have an incredibly vibrant economy right now. Healthcare, most people don't realize, is by and far the largest economic driver. Not country music or music of any kind, but healthcare is really the primary driver there. We're not going to change our motto. We love the fact that people view us as a creative city, but that's what's doing it. So about 7 years ago, the city leadership convened a group of people to address the problem in what they saw as a crisis situation of how are we going to find enough talent to fill the pipeline of jobs that are being requested here. And it was specifically health IT talent. And I was involved, I didn't have this position, I was just involved as a member of the board of Tennessee HIMSS at the time. But several things came out of that. They convened or created a series of tech skills panels where they brought business together with all the universities and colleges to talk about skills in 3 different areas: healthcare, IT, and advanced manufacturing, so that the educational facilities understood what the needs were from the employers and could tailor their programs to that. From a Nashville Technology Council perspective, they launched an initiative that went the other direction, where we placed industry representatives on advisory councils out in the universities. And I happened to be a participant in that with Trevecca University. And I can tell you that based on that feedback, they added multiple new degree programs. It's one of those private colleges where they were able to turn quickly as opposed to some others. And we actually witnessed new programs going into place to help turn out the students that were needed for the jobs that we'd found needed to be addressed. So
your role, one of your roles, is to act as kind of an active conduit between the employer sector on one hand and the schools on the other.
Yes. Yes, we do that. We have a number of programs that go down into K through 12. We hold coded camps. We've heard other areas that are doing that. That's a much longer term investment, obviously, but still very important, because if the university is going to do their job, they need students applying into those degree programs, and that comes from generating the interest at middle school and high school for that.
Let me go to Aaron. So in terms of the tech employment force, it is no secret that people of color are dramatically underrepresented. There was recently a report that came from the National Bureau of Economic Research that showed that 95% of entrepreneurs and 97% of venture capitalists are white or Asian. What are the main obstacles faced by minority students looking to get involved with tech and entrepreneurship?
So we, at In3, we kind of summarize it into what we call 3 Cs. There's the lack of social capital, which is just the access to a network of individuals that can make it easy for you to identify the opportunities for you to be successful in this space. There's the lack of technical capital, which is there are challenges in the public school system. Unfortunately, a large number of folks in this underrepresented community attend these public schools that aren't properly preparing them for these opportunities. And then the last one, which is the obvious one, is the financial capital. It is abundantly clear, there's tons of data that shows there just isn't that much capital in the underrepresented community. So if someone's looking to start a business, fund a startup, they have to look outside of their community in most cases to get the funding that they need, and then it falls on the first C, which is the social capital. If I don't have a network, if I'm not golfing with some guy who has a dad who's a rich uncle who can write me a check, how do I get started?
Now you also teach computer science at Howard, right? Yes. So so when you're teaching, minority students, how do you imbue those skills?
The teaching is always a challenge, because we have to realize there's a lot of social issues that impact kind of the opportunities that you believe are available to you. If you're a student and you're the first generation in the family to go to college, a lot of people have made tremendous sacrifices financially, emotionally, physically to get you there. Your primary objective is to get a job on the back end, right? So any entrepreneurial ideas that you have, anything that might be off the path of not getting you a job, unfortunately, you're forced to make a choice between getting a job or kind of investing in these other interesting opportunities. So when I teach, I try to teach the student about being creative. I try to teach them about just building a product, not focusing so much on the specific academics around it, because some other teacher will provide them that. My background's in entrepreneurship and in starting businesses, so I try to kind of plant that seed of opportunity in their mind so that hopefully somewhere later they'll be able to kind of, take advantage of that.
Good. So let me go to Katie. So one theme that we've heard throughout the day and here is there's this mismatch, right? There's a mismatch between what employers need and what schools are producing. And you've got a school system that is notoriously resistant to change. We still let our kids go home for 3 months every summer on the assumption they need to go home and help with the harvest, right? So it is a difficult system to attack and change. So Katie, what changes from a policy perspective, what changes in federal policy would help and perhaps align the schools more with the necessary skills that need to be taught for today's employees?
Sure. So kind of going back to K through 12, we think a lot about not necessarily, well, school choice has been a great example moving forward, but there's a lot of education spending accounts where the dollars follow the kids to different schools so that parents have more of an option to decide where their kids are going to go, or opportunities for different schools that might have a vocational education or something along those lines. But something else that we've looked at ATR and have kind of worked a bit with the Swiss ambassador is on their apprenticeship program there. And so, let me get my numbers right, 70% of high school students participate in this apprenticeship program. The companies participate. It's not government forced or anything like that, but it's accepted as a different pathway. So there are multiple pathways to success. So you don't necessarily have to go through the university path. You can go to work at a company where you've got a mentor who teaches you the skills. You get paid, like $800 a month stipend, and you're learning these skill sets that the companies already know that they need going forward. And they have a 90% success rate coming out of that. That means employment at the end of that. So you can either go the university direction, you can continue with the apprenticeship, and there is not one is greater than the other. So these are looked at as equal forms of education, equal ways of getting to the end goal. And I think that's maybe more, not necessarily and this doesn't have to happen at the federal level. This can just be a mind shift of our companies and the way that we educate and that kind of thing. I actually tell a lot of my interns to quit college and go get a job.
So, but that's true. What I found interesting was we had the chancellor of the Virginia Community Colleges who was saying that there are all these jobs out there, and his quote was, "If you know how to fix something, you'll always have a middle-class job." But parents say, well, that's fine for somebody else's kid, but my kid is going to go to college and get an English degree or something. Well, what's interesting about what you just described is it's 70% of, it's like the Israeli army. It's like pretty much every kid does it.
Yeah.
So there's no stigma attached.
Sure, and it's not a hard thing to break into. I mean, companies are looking for people to fill the jobs. If you can go to a high school and find somebody who wants to do it, people who aren't looking at options A and B, they're going for all the other options. Those, like we were talking backstage about critical thinking and how do you get past that, the obstacles that other people put in front of you. And I think that's kind of the fascination that maybe we've all had with Uber, is that saying, well, there's all this red tape, but this is how I'm going to do it. There's another way. So there are other ways to these employments, and I think as these discussions continue, we have more ways to access that.
Okay. And one of those, obviously, is the whole notion of automation and how to create automation complementary jobs.
Sure.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then I know this has been quick, but I'm going to go to Q&A because I know there are probably very good questions out there. Max, We had a terrific pre-panel before the panel in the green room. It was actually phenomenal. And one thing that you said is that everything that is not critical thinking can be automated or will be automated. Everything that is not critical thinking will be automated. So generally, automation is talked about as something that will inevitably reduce jobs and make jobs more scarce. Do you see a scenario coming from Vudu where automation can make jobs more plentiful?
Yeah, I think the way we look at it is that there's still a net positive effect from automation in the manufacturing space because jobs in the theme of this panel are going to be made more local. There's a stat that Foxconn, one of the largest manufacturers in China, is going to automate 70% of their assembly work in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's a really interesting development because a robot that operates in China doesn't have a wage advantage over a robot here in the United States. And so maybe you don't have an employee involved in the assembly or direct production of that product, but there's all these ancillary jobs that come with it. And that's really what we're building at Vudu. Everything from maintenance staff to sales to customer support. And these are the jobs where robotics and automation aren't really ready to step in and take jobs away from people. And so I think we're going to see a shift where manufacturing at least becomes more local. And there's a real speed and cost advantage to having manufacturing closer to where the products are going to be delivered. And so we are able to support a facility in New York City that is producing parts, many of which, more than 50%, are for local customers. And we can do that because of automation. It wouldn't be possible any other way. Because we can operate more cost effectively than any company could 20 years ago.
Great. And Brian, do you see this reflected in Nashville as well? This localization of manufacturing?
I've not seen that particular thing.
Right.
I think we're the only company that does exactly what we're doing, so to be fair.
Okay, we are down to 5 minutes. I'm going to quickly go out and see if there are any questions in the crowd. Please raise your hand. Yes, in the front, and please tell us who you are and who you're with.
Hi, I'm Paul Schrader. I'm a consultant working in the disability community. I've been 20 years in the disability space working on technology accessibility. So what I haven't really heard too much today, and I'm wondering this panel might be the right one to address it, is what's the role of, and how do we expedite the kind of changes that will be necessary in and around the tech workforce to accommodate people with disabilities? There are most of us who have sensory, physical, cognitive disabilities would require accommodations to be able to do the kind of work that you're all talking about and taking for granted. Of course, perhaps except for the critical thinking piece. So I'm wondering what if any of you have to say about that? Have you begun to work on disability accessibility for the technology jobs that you're creating? And do you have some thoughts about how we can, from our community, help expedite making that happen so that we can reduce unemployment in our group, which is sky high?
Any thoughts on that?
I can tell you that our current project is called In3 for an Inclusive Innovation Incubator. We've opened the space as 8,000 square foot co-working space, and one of the things that we did, we brought some folks in from the disabled community in to take a look at the space. And they kind of said what you said. They found some issues with the way the space was laid out. The building is kind of grandfathered in, so there was only some changes that, quote, were required by law to be made. But the first step for us, what we're doing in the space right now, is finding ways to work with the mayor's office and Howard University on how we can address some of those issues just to make the space more welcoming. The individual who came in to the space, he said that he wanted to bring more of his friends, into the space to kind of interact with us and the things we're doing, but he said he did not feel it was welcoming to him. There's a much larger issue about the whole tech ecosystem being welcoming to different groups. But for us, even just starting there, although it might seem, as you said, trivial to some folks, it is an important first step to us.
All right, next question. Yes.
Hi, Chris from Workbench. Question for Max. The preparation of kids in K-12 for this kind of next generation manufacturing environment? You know, if they didn't end up taking a college path, you know, what would you have them doing in K-12 to lead up to that so they can jump right into a interesting manufacturing or just next generation workforce?
Good question. We do have a number of employees who don't have four-year college degrees. And getting back to something I said earlier, a lot of kids in K-12 are now self-taught in a lot of the tools that we use at our business. And I really have to thank the maker movement of the last 5+ years. The fact that I think every major school district or local library in the country seems to have a 3D printer. And then paired with that printer is certainly a computer with access to 3D design software. Means that the number of opportunities for us to find, students even right out of K-12 who have the skill set we need are huge. I think we could probably set up our next facility almost anywhere in the country and have a wealth of applicants because of the maker movement.
Okay, next question. All right, way in the back, yes.
Sorry, thank you, panelists, and thank you, CTA, for hosting. For Brian, I had a quick question for you. I've been to Nashville many times, lovely city. Everybody seems to play an instrument. Chattanooga, elsewhere in the state, has taken a step to sort of unbundle the local loop with regards to broadband, and that's been driving a lot of innovation. Sitting as you do within the same state, but in Nashville, how does Nashville view what Chattanooga has done, and are you going to pursue similar policies with regards to what you're trying to advocate for with regards to the state and to the city?
That's a loaded question. there's been a lot of activity, legislative and legal, around that. What Chattanooga did is the municipality actually strung the cable. So they went in competition with their local service providers and provided gigabit service to the entire area. We actually have 3 different providers, Google Fiber, Comcast, and AT&T, bringing gigabit fiber into town. One of the few communities in the States that has multiple providers providing gigabit service for us right now. And the issue that's come up, as you can imagine, we don't have anywhere near enough time to tell this story, is the competition that happened when Google came into town against the 2 incumbent Comcast and AT&T. Net result is prices went down, speeds went up. That was all great.
Well, we're all for competition.
Yes.
All right, so Aaron, I want to take the moderator's prerogative and ask the last question, which is, so I recently attended a presentation by the people in charge of diversity at Google, and it was really impressive. And what I came away with is that it requires a prolonged systemic investment and process, right? It's not just hiring. Hiring is just the first step, and then it goes from there. What would you say to entrepreneurs and business leaders in the audience that want to have a more diverse workforce? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that the emphasis needs to start a little bit earlier. I think, as they were saying before about focusing on K through 12, and I think that we need to start measuring outcomes. I see folks writing checks, smiling with little kids, and moving on. Checks need to be written, outcomes need to be asked for, and we need to measure results. I mean, I have a software background. Everything we do in software, we iterate. I don't see the iteration happening. Like I said, checks are written, people are smiling, you're getting the PR, the press photo to say, look, I'm helping these poor kids. But no one's saying, well, I wrote this check to your organization, you did this, what's coming out on the back end, right? And what I find strange about it is, specifically with technology companies, right? That's how they function, right? They create a product, they QA it, they test it, they iterate, and when they find errors, they modify. But I don't see that happening when it comes to addressing this kind of diversity and tech issue.
So you need rigor and goals and accountability.
Yes.
Always good advice. All right, we can keep on going for another hour, but we are out of time. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause.